Hello, today I'm going to show you how to sharpen the chainsaw. But first we're going to tighten up that chain. That's about right there. So we're going to lock it in place. Okay, first of all I'm going to put a mark so when I go all around I'll know when to stop. This is a brand new file. It's really not work to use a worn out file. You're just going to work so much harder. It's going to take so much longer. By the time I went through a chain, I used about 2 or 3 files. They don't last that long, so it's important to change it often. I like to use 2 hands, one on the handle, one at the end of the file. And I like to count how many strokes I do because every teeth is going to be the same. On the other side, even though I filed 5 times, on the other side I might file 4 times. If it's easier for me, if my strokes are more aggressive, then I can't count to 5 because then I'm going to remove more material on one side than the other, and then your chainsaw is going to cut crooked. Also, when I file, I don't push down. I do the opposite. I pull up. So I pull this way here and also up like this, because it's going to sharpen your teeth right to the edge. If you file this way pushing down, you might not get right to the edge of the teeth, and that's really important. So when I file, I kind of push up like that. I don't know if you can see this on the video, but this tooth here, the tip is worn right out. It's supposed to be nice and pointy here, so we have to file that till it's nice and pointy again. Again, when I file, I lift up at the same time. Alright, that took about 6 strokes, and it's nice and pointy, it's nice and sharp. So we're going to do the same for the rest. See this one here, how bad it is? It's all blunt. The tip is not pointy at all. Again, 6 strokes and it made it nice and pointy and sharp again. Now, I don't know if you can see this on the video, but there's a line right here. It's kind of etched in the tooth, and once you file up to the line, that means it's time to replace your chain. But also this line has an angle on it, so when you file, try to put your file parallel to the line. That would be your proper angle. Again, I don't know if we can even see this line on the video, but it's there. I don't know if all the chains have a line like that. Maybe not in the smaller chainsaws, but this is a larger chainsaw. It requires a 732 file, now we're done sharpening one side, so now we're going to sharpen the other side. Okay, I wanted to show you the teeth here. There's my measuring tape. The 8-inch mark lines up with the line on the teeth, and you can see I've got just a little over 1/8 of an inch of material left. Now all of the teeth are supposed to be the same, whether it's a 1/16 of an inch, an 1/8, 3/32, because if they're all sharpened at 1/8 of an inch material left on one side and the other side has 3/16 of an inch left, the saw is going to cut crooked. Now I usually don't use a measuring tape to know if all my teeth are straight. I just not straight, but I should mean the same amount of material. I just do it by eye, and I mean, it's not that critical, but it has to be as close as possible. All of the teeth on both sides, they have to be the same, otherwise your saw will cut crooked. One more thing I'd like to mention is that the teeth goes up on an angle, as you can see with this ruler here. Okay, they all point up on an angle, so that means once you sharpen the teeth, the more you sharpen it, the lower the point of the teeth gets. And if it gets too low, then your wrecker right here needs to be filed down. Otherwise you're going to have to push really hard on the log to cut the log. So after I sharpen the chainsaw 3 or 4 times, depending how much I file it out, I will take a flat file and bring the wrecker down a bit, like so. Maybe just give it a couple shots every wrecker, and your chainsaw is really going to bite in the wood. Now if you bring the wrecker down too low, it's going to bite too much. Now you're probably wondering how low you're supposed to file the wrecker. What I do is I put a straight edge on top of the teeth and on top of the other teeth. You can't see it on the video here, but it's resting on one tooth and then it's resting on the other one, and then you can see there's a gap here between the straight edge and the wrecker, and I got about 1 millimeter here. I found that works pretty good. I mean, if it doesn't bite enough in the wood, you can always file it down a little bit more. But as a rule of thumb, I find that 1 millimeter or 2 millimeter is good. If you wouldn't have any gap at all here, it wouldn't bite in the wood. It would just cut horrible. It would feel like your chain's really dull, even though you just sharpened it. So it's really important to check here the gap and make sure you have at least 1 millimeter. Or an inch is maybe a 1/16 of an inch or a bit less. I would also like to mention that when you file down your wrecker, you have to file it down the same amount every wrecker, both sides. Again, if the wreckers on one side of the chains are filed down more, your saw is going to cut crooked. Okay, there's something else I want to show you. there's the chain goes into a slot here on your bar, and even though you've sharpened your chain, you did everything right, you know, you set your wreckers the perfect height, your teeth are nice and sharp, the gap between the line on the teeth and the edge of your teeth is all the same distance, and it's still not cutting right. It's not cutting the same as when you first bought it. Well, most likely your bar needs to be replaced. Over time, especially if you cut with a dull chain, your blade is going to overheat, and it's going to wear, the gap here is going to wear faster. And when it wears too much, the gap here gets too wide, and you start cutting, and all of a sudden your chain goes like this. It goes on an angle, and it doesn't want to bite in the wood anymore. And you know, then you set your angle of your chain, of your bar, a little bit. All of a sudden it bites, and it's going to give you more problems, especially when you cut sideways with it. Let's say you're trying to cut a tree down. This is when you're really going to notice, you know, what's wrong with my chainsaw. It doesn't have power. The blade overheats. This is the problem. Your gap is getting too big. You need to buy another bar. This is so important. You will notice if you have you had your chainsaw for a while, it's got quite a bit of mileage, you know, your bar is getting worn out, the gap is getting bigger, and once you buy a new bar, you will see it's a totally different chainsaw. It's going to cut just like when it was you first bought it, when it was brand new. It's just incredible the difference that it makes. I can't emphasize that enough. Now you're probably wondering how tight should I put the chain. Right now this chain here, it's just if I let it go, it's just sagging slightly. You know, I could pull on it there. That's about the right tension right there. Okay, now let's see how well my chainsaw cuts. It cuts nice and straight. Okay, now let's see how well it cuts in hardwood. This is black ash. Don't you love it when the chainsaw is that sharp?